and never thought I'd see the day he'd look at me with disgust for simply feeling something. He called me too emotional, like caring was a crime, like empathy was weakness. But the moment his mistress walked into his birthday celebration, carrying a cake with his name on it, that was the moment everyone saw exactly what kind of man he really was. He used to say I was passionate, back when he still needed my warmth to make his life look human, back when my laughter wasn't an inconvenience. Let's say his name was Ethan. Sharp suit, sharper smile, the kind of man who looked perfect in photographs and hollow in person. To everyone else, he was the picture of composure, confident, witty, dependable. But behind closed doors, I learned that calm can rot into cruelty. It started with corrections, small ones. You're overreacting. Don't take it so personally. Each phrase a pinprick that drew no blood but left a mark. Then came the comparisons, how other girlfriends were easier, more chill, how he didn't have to walk on eggshells around them. I told myself he was stressed from work, that his tone was just exhaustion. Love makes excuses like that. It buys time for people who've already spent you. Ethan worked in marketing at a sleek downtown firm, all glass walls and expensive silence. I'd visit sometimes, bringing lunch or just saying hi. His coworkers adored him. He's the calmest person in the office, they'd say. I used to smile at that. Now I know why calm people are so dangerous. They can commit emotional murder and still keep their voice steady. The first time he called me too emotional, it was because I cried after finding messages on his phone. Harmless, he said. Just work stuff. Except the messages weren't about work. They were about her. The new copywriter, a recent hire named Sophie, whose creative brainstorming apparently involved midnight texts filled with inside jokes and heart emojis. When I confronted him, he didn't yell. He didn't even deny it. He sighed, the sound of practiced disappointment. God, you're so emotional, he said. This is why I don't tell you things. You make everything dramatic. That sentence cut deeper than the betrayal itself. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said them. Calm, measured, like a teacher correcting a slow student. For days, I floated through work like a ghost. My friends noticed. My boss noticed. Ethan didn't. He just went on posting motivational quotes online about balance in communication while ignoring my silence. Then, one afternoon, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Sophie, a blurry photo of champagne glasses clinking in a restaurant I recognized. Ethan's jacket sleeve was in the corner of the frame. Caption, "Celebrating the best man I know." That's when I stopped crying. Not because it hurt less, but because I'd found clarity. The next morning, I woke up early, sat at my desk, and started writing. Not a message, not a confrontation. A plan. Ethan's birthday was in 3 weeks. He loved being celebrated, the kind of man who pretended to hate attention, but always made sure to get it. His office threw him a small party every year. Balloons, cake, polite laughter, a speech about leadership. The same script every time. Only this year the script was going to change. I didn't want revenge that screamed. I wanted revenge that smiled. The kind that arrived in perfect wrapping paper and cut deeper because it looked polite. So I started preparing. First, I called the bakery they used every year, his favorite place, the one that made those overpriced cakes with the gold lettering. I placed the order under my name, told them exactly what flavor he liked, exactly how it should look. Then I gave them a different delivery contact. Her name, her number, her office address. And when the day came, she'd walk through those glass doors carrying his birthday cake, the one she didn't realize I'd ordered. I spent the next few weeks playing the perfect girlfriend again, smiling, checking in, even pretending to forget his upcoming birthday. The performance was exhausting but necessary. You can't catch a liar off guard unless you make him believe he's safe. He started relaxing again, the arrogance of someone who thought the worst was behind him. I let him believe it. I cooked dinner, laughed at his jokes, even helped him choose an outfit for his big day. Every gesture was a move on a chessboard he didn't realize he was losing. The night before his birthday, I lay next to him, pretending to sleep, listening to him text someone under the covers. A soft vibration, a muted laugh. Probably her. My heart didn't race anymore. It just settled into a cold, steady rhythm. Tomorrow would be his performance, and mine. When the sun rose, I kissed him goodbye and wished him a great day at work. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Don't get too emotional if I'm home late. The team's doing something for me." I smiled back. "Of course, honey. Enjoy your surprise." He had no idea how right he was. The morning of his birthday was almost cinematic in its precision. Early sunlight bounced off the glass towers downtown, turning everything gold and unreal. The city hummed with motion. Cars, voices, the familiar blur of routine, and in the middle of it all I felt still. My plan was already moving, and all I had to do was stay quiet long enough to let it work. Ethan left for work early, dressed in his usual casual authority, tailored navy blazer, watch too expensive for its purpose, that faint trace of cologne that always made people turn their heads. He looked exactly like the man he wanted the world to see. "Don't wait up," he said at the door, flashing that well-rehearsed half-smile. "They've got a full day planned." I nodded. "I'm sure they do." As soon as the door closed, I exhaled. The apartment, once ours, felt too tidy, too symmetrical. Everything he owned looked curated. Nothing out of place, nothing real. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and checked the bakery's tracking email one more time. Status, out for delivery. The message felt electric. The delivery instructions were clear. Delivered to Ethan Carter, Carter and Low Marketing, 14th floor. Attention, Sophie. She'd listed her number on the company site, and I had used it without hesitation. When the bakery called that morning to confirm, I kept my tone light, cheerful, the kind of voice you trust. "Yes, please make sure Sophie signs for it personally." It's a surprise from me. The cruelty of it wasn't in the act. It was in the elegance. No screaming, no confrontation. Just Truth walking through the door on its own two legs, holding a box with his name in gold icing. At 10 a.m., I went for a run. The air was crisp, sharp against my lungs, but it felt good to move. My body hummed with adrenaline, not anxiety. Somewhere across the city, he was probably answering birthday calls, pretending gratitude, maybe even messaging her. The thought didn't sting anymore. If anything, it made me smile. I returned home, showered, made breakfast, and opened my laptop again. A part of me wanted to be there, to see it unfold. The moment Sophie arrived at the office, the confusion on his face, the widening eyes of his colleagues. But another part knew I didn't need to. Some moments are more powerful when imagined. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Lena, a mutual friend who worked in the same building. "You will not believe what just happened." I leaned back in my chair. "Oh, I think I will." Lena's messages came fast, one after another. So they had this big office lunch for him. Balloons, speeches, the usual. Then this woman walks in with a huge cake, smiling like it's her wedding day. Everyone thought she was from catering. She asks for him by name. He gets up, confused but trying to look gracious. Then she says, "This is for the best man I know." I could picture it, the pause, the murmur, the first flicker of recognition. Someone asked who she was, Lena continued. She said, "His girlfriend." Then she realized people were staring and froze. He looked like someone had slapped him. It was glorious. My hands shook, not from shock, but from the sheer, perfect timing of it all. The universe, for once, had a sense of humor. Ethan, ever the actor, probably tried to laugh it off, make a joke, maybe pull her aside for damage control. But that room was full of people who lived on gossip and body language. You can't unsee a lie collapsing. A few minutes later, another message came. HR asked them both to step outside. "Everyone's talking. You planned this, didn't you?" I smiled at the screen, typed back. Let's just say I gave honesty a little push. By the time the afternoon faded into early evening, the story had already started spreading. A colleague posted a photo of the cake on her story, "Office Drama Level 100." The caption underneath read, "Too emotional? Maybe just honest." It was like watching dominoes fall, one after another, each one spelling out the word karma. When Ethan finally came home that night, the performance was over. His shirt was untucked, tie loose, eyes hollow. He dropped his keys on the counter and said nothing. I didn't look up from my book. "How was the office?" I asked lightly. He stared at me for a long second, mouth opening, then closing again, the silence between us thick enough to taste. "You knew," he finally said. His voice cracked. I turned a page. "I'm emotional, remember? We feel things deeply, even irony." He didn't answer. He just stood there, realizing that all his carefully balanced lies had toppled in one quiet, devastating scene. And for once, I didn't need to explain myself. Before all the lies and the cake and the spectacle, there was calm, or at least what I mistook for it. Ethan and I met the way people in their late 20s usually meet, too busy for sincerity, too lonely for games. He was magnetic in that polished way successful men tend to be, the kind of person who looked like he'd been born wearing confidence instead of skin. I mistook that confidence for safety. It's an easy mistake, especially when you've spent years craving someone who seems like they'll never lose control. Back then, his quietness felt like stability. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't make scenes. I'd dated chaos before, men who mistook attention for affection. Ethan was different. He listened. He observed. He had this way of looking at me like he already knew how I felt before I said anything. For a while, I thought that was love. Later, I realized it was calculation. In the beginning, he made me feel chosen. He'd text good morning before my alarm, pick me up after work, kiss my wrist when he wanted to say I love you without words. My friends adored him. My mother called him steady. I called him mine. We moved in together after a year. His apartment looked like a magazine spread. Minimal, structured, untouched by life. The first time I tried hanging a photo of us, he laughed. "It throws off the balance," he said. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. At first, I adapted. I stopped leaving coffee mugs on the counter, stopped singing in the shower, stopped wearing bright colors, because he said neutrals looked more sophisticated. I told myself compromise was part of love. But compromise becomes erasure when only one person is doing it. Still, I ignored the discomfort, because stability can feel intoxicating after chaos. There were dinners with his coworkers, rooftop parties, weekends at wine tastings where everyone talked and curated smiles. He'd hold my hand and whisper compliments that sounded like control. "You look perfect tonight. Just don't say too much, okay? You get nervous when you talk in big groups." He said it kindly, almost protectively, so I laughed it off. But each time, I spoke a little less. Each time, the space I occupied grew smaller. He didn't need to silence me. He just taught me to do it myself. The cracks began in tiny, unnoticeable ways. A sigh when I asked how his day was. A raised brow when I cried during a movie. "You're too sensitive," he'd murmur, as if stating a fact. "You take everything to heart." And when I'd apologize, because that's what I did back then, he'd smile, touch my cheek, and say, "See? That's what I mean. Don't be so emotional." At first, I thought he was right. Maybe I was too reactive, too intense. Women get told that so often we start to believe it's a flaw. But over time, I noticed how too emotional became a shield he hid behind whenever I questioned him. He could be late, distracted, distant. It didn't matter. If I asked why, he'd say I was imagining problems. Then came the absences, late nights at the office, weekend team retreats. The first time he missed our anniversary, he brought home flowers and an apology rehearsed to sound spontaneous. "You know how demanding this job is?" he said, loosening his tie, leaning in for a kiss. "Don't make this into something it's not." And I didn't. I told myself good relationships required patience, that love wasn't about constant validation. I kept telling myself that until the validation stopped coming at all. The first time I truly doubted him was on a Sunday morning. I woke up early, sunlight spilling through the blinds, and found him in the living room, still in his dress shirt from the night before. His phone lit up on the table. A name I didn't recognize. Sophie. He snatched it up before I could say anything. "Work stuff," he said, smiling too quickly. "You wouldn't understand. It's just brainstorming." But the lie wasn't in the words. It was in the way his smile lingered too long, trying to stay believable. After that, the pattern solidified. Every time my intuition caught something off, he dismissed it. Every time I asked, he redefined reality until I doubted my own memory. "Babe, you're twisting things again. You really need to stop letting your emotions run wild." He said it so often it became my own inner voice. Looking back now, I think the moment he truly started losing control wasn't when I found out about her. It was when I stopped reacting the way he expected. Because manipulators don't know what to do when the performance stops. They need an audience. They need applause. They need belief. And when I finally went quiet, not out of fear but out of calculation, he mistook it for surrender. That was his first mistake. Ethan loved control the way some people love applause. Quietly, greedily, like oxygen. His power didn't come from shouting or breaking things. It came from stillness. From the way he could sit in a room and make everyone adjust to his silence. That's what people admired about him. Calm, unflappable, disciplined. The kind of man who never raised his voice, because he didn't need to. He had mastered the art of looking good while making others feel small. To everyone else, he was flawless. He held doors open, remembered birthdays, spoke softly to waiters. I used to think kindness and decency were the same thing. They're not. Decency doesn't require witnesses. At home, the tone was different. Not cruel, just precise. He didn't insult me directly. He edited me. "Do you really want to wear that? You sound defensive when you talk like that. You cry too easily. People will stop taking you seriously." Each comment sounded rational, even helpful, but they stacked up like invisible stones, building a wall between who I was and who he wanted me to be. He didn't like emotion because it made him uncomfortable. Feeling things meant losing control, and control was his religion. Whenever I cried, he'd sigh, as if my pain was an inconvenience. "Here we go again," he'd say, rubbing his temples. "You need to learn to calm down before you make everything worse." I started apologizing for feelings I hadn't even had yet. The strange thing was, he didn't want me gone. He wanted me compliant. He'd hold me afterward, stroke my hair, whisper how much he loved me, and in that moment, I believed him. That was the genius of his illusion. He never looked like a villain. He looked like a man doing his best with a woman who couldn't stop being too much. That's how manipulation works, not through anger, but through patience. He had a phrase he used often, "You're misinterpreting." It was his favorite trick. If I brought up something hurtful, he'd tilt his head, smile gently, and explain why what I saw wasn't what really happened. And by the end of it, I'd be the one apologizing for misunderstanding. Gaslighting sounds theatrical until you've lived it. Then you realize it's quiet, a subtle erosion of your confidence, a steady drip that wears down your sense of truth. His calmness was armor. Mine became survival. At work, he was adored. Promotions, recognition, endless praise for being so grounded. I used to sit through dinners with his coworkers, watching him perform kindness while I performed happiness. His hand would rest lightly on my thigh, under the table, his smile trained for effect. People would toast to him, call him an example of emotional intelligence. I'd smile along, tasting irony in the back of my throat. But even perfect masks slip eventually. One evening, we hosted a small gathering in our apartment. He was charming, attentive, introducing me as the heart of the home. He said it with that same gentle authority that made people believe him. Halfway through, while clearing glasses, I overheard one of his coworkers mention Sophie. She's really grown into the role. Ethan's been mentoring her personally. Mentoring. The word echoed like a whisper through glass. I caught his eye from across the room. He smiled, raised his glass, and mouthed, "You okay?" as if he were checking on a fragile child. And in that moment, something in me shifted. Not anger, awareness. The kind that arrives too late, but still changes everything. That night, when the guest left, I asked him about her, calmly. "She's talented," he said, loosening his tie. "You'd like her." I asked if he ever spent time with her outside of work. His smile faltered for the briefest second, a glitch in his performance, then returned. "You're doing it again," he said softly. "Looking for problems that aren't there." I almost let it go. Almost. But then he added, "You're too emotional about everything. That's why I can't talk to you about things like this." That was the first time the word emotional didn't feel like an insult. It felt like evidence. I realized that what he called emotional was actually inconvenient. Emotion meant perception, and perception meant I could see him. The next morning, he brought me coffee, kissed my forehead, acted like nothing had happened. I played along, but while he left for work, I opened his laptop. His passwords were simple, predictable. His birthday, our anniversary. Arrogance disguised as confidence. Inside his inbox, I found messages that blurred the line between professional and personal. Compliments on her ideas. Late-night drafts that had nothing to do with work. A few harmless photos, then not-so-harmless ones. He had created an entire secret narrative parallel to ours, the version where he wasn't criticized, where he could be the hero without consequences. When I closed the laptop, I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I just sat in the stillness, realizing something powerful. Emotional people might break first, but they also rebuild stronger. That night, I deleted none of it. I backed it all up instead. He came home with takeout and 2 glasses of wine. "Peace offering," he said, smiling. I smiled back. "Thank you." And as we ate, I watched him tell stories about work. Confident, charming, the perfect man. He didn't realize I was memorizing every word, every tone, every tell. By the time he looked up and said, "You're quiet tonight," I already knew the truth. I wasn't quiet. I was calculating. Betrayal doesn't arrive with thunder. It walks in quietly, wearing the scent you once loved. The night it all came together wasn't remarkable at first. The sky hung low, the kind of gray that makes the city look washed out and waiting for something to happen. Ethan was working late again. He'd said it with that patient sigh that always implied, "I'm doing this for us." I almost believed him. Almost. I stayed home, restless, pretending to read but watching the clock instead. His patterns had become familiar, the time he usually texted, the window of silence that meant he was driving home, the soft jingle of his keys in the door. Tonight, the silence stretched too long. It was around 10 when his laptop chimed. A notification, unread email. I told myself I wouldn't look. Then I did. Subject line, "Last night." Sender, Sophie. I hesitated, then clicked. The email was short. "Still thinking about you. Don't forget your tie here next time." Winking face. My throat went dry. The tie, his favorite one, the navy silk with faint silver stripes, had been missing for weeks. He said he'd left it at the cleaners. I stared at the screen, heartbeat hammering like it wanted to break something. There it was. Confirmation, simple and cruel. No gaslighting, no debate, just truth, spelled out in casual flirting. The kind of truth he'd still try to make sound harmless. I scrolled down, my fingers cold, reading the thread. Their messages weren't dramatic. They were routine, soft, domestic. "You make the office bearable. You looked incredible today. She doesn't get you like I do." That line, "She doesn't get you." I leaned back, staring at it, and something inside me finally snapped into focus. For months, he'd convinced me that I was too emotional, too reactive, too much. But reading that, I realized he didn't hate my emotions. He hated that I noticed, that I felt the shifts in him before he could hide them. He hated that my instincts were right. I wasn't too emotional. I was too aware. I opened the gallery folder attached to one of the emails. Photos, their hands brushing over wine glasses. His reflection caught in a hotel mirror. Her smile, smug and soft. I should have felt rage. I should have wanted to scream, throw something, confront him right there. Instead, I felt a strange calm, almost clinical. There's a moment when heartbreak stops feeling personal and starts feeling like data. I sat there, downloading every photo, every email, organizing them into neat little folders. Receipts, as my best friend Lena liked to say. At 10:42, I heard his car pull into the driveway. I closed the laptop, wiped my face, and walked into the kitchen. By the time the door opened, I had a glass of wine in my hand and a smile that could pass for peace. "Long night?" I asked. He kissed my cheek, the same cheek he'd probably imagined her lips on hours ago. "You know how it is. Meetings ran over." "Of course," I said lightly. "I warmed dinner for you." He smiled, grateful, maybe even proud of how understanding I was. He ate, talked about work, even mentioned Sophie, calling her sharp, a real talent. My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice steady. "You seem to spend a lot of time mentoring her," I said, almost playfully. He laughed. "You're not jealous, are you?" I tilted my head. "Should I be?" He reached across the table, touched my hand. "You're adorable when you're being silly." I smiled back, my pulse steady. He had no idea he was already a ghost in a story that no longer belonged to him. Later that night, when he fell asleep beside me, I unlocked his phone with the password he didn't know I knew. Messages confirmed what I'd already seen. Same tone, same carelessness. They talked like lovers who'd been doing it long enough to get comfortable. Scrolling through, I found one conversation that stood out. "Sophie, I wish I could see your face when you open your birthday gift tomorrow. Don't worry, I made it special. Ethan, you're amazing. She could never do something like this." The message wasn't just insulting. It was poetic. He was right. I could never do something like that. Because I would never betray someone who trusted me, but I could do something else. I looked at the timestamp, 12:08 a.m. The bakery opened in 7 hours. Plenty of time to make sure his gift arrived exactly where it should. I closed his phone, rolled onto my back, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel unstable. I felt awake. There's a kind of peace that comes after heartbreak. The peace of knowing you're done, begging someone to see you. He slept beside me, dreaming his small, predictable dreams, unaware that the woman next to him had just decided how his story would end. And this time, I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make sure he did. Morning light can make even betrayal look ordinary. I woke to the smell of his cologne still clinging to the pillow, that clean, expensive scent that used to feel safe. He was in the shower, humming, off-key, content, unaware that his life was now a countdown. I moved quietly through the apartment, opening the curtains, letting the light flood in. The world outside kept spinning. People rushing to work, buses sighing at every stop. The same city that had watched me break 100 times and said nothing. But today felt different. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was designing. He came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, smiling. "Morning. You look calm." "I slept well," I said, and it was true. Vengeance, when planned with precision, is strangely restful. After he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and coffee, the same setup where I'd once written anniversary cards. Now, I wrote emails. The bakery's website glowed softly on the screen. They knew him there. He'd ordered cakes from them before, always chocolate, always gold lettering that said something smug like "to the best boss." I placed the order exactly the same way, down to the font. Flavor, dark chocolate mousse. I added a note. "Happy birthday, Ethan, from the one who really knows what you like." Then I wrote the delivery instructions with surgical precision. Recipient, Ethan Carter, Carter and Low Marketing, 14th floor. Delivered by Sophie Lang. Contact number, hers. When the confirmation email arrived, I smiled. Small, sharp, satisfied. It wasn't cruelty. It was choreography. But revenge, to be convincing, needs stage design. So I started rehearsing my own part. That meant pretending. Pretending to care. Pretending I'd forgotten. Pretending to still be the woman who'd once believed him. He'd expect nothing less. He'd trained me to seem grateful for scraps. That evening, when he came home, I greeted him with a kiss and his favorite dinner. He was surprised. "You remembered my birthday's next week," he said, half teasing. I shrugged. "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" He smiled, relief flickering across his face. He thought he was winning again. He poured wine, toasted to second chances, and didn't notice how long I held his gaze over the rim of my glass. Over the next few days, I went through the motions with a precision that bordered on art. I laughed at his stories, answered his texts, even asked about Sophie. He didn't hesitate when he talked about her. He'd grown bold again. "She's brilliant," he said. "Reminds me of you, actually, back when you weren't so—" "So what?" I asked. He grinned, playful, so intense. I smiled. "Right, too emotional." He laughed, not realizing the word had become a fuse. I started collecting details. The exact time of his office celebration, who would be there, the layout of the floor. Lena, my friend in HR, was my silent informant, her messages short and efficient. "Lunch party scheduled for 12:30. Everyone attending. You'll want to time it then." Perfect. That weekend, I pretended to plan a spa day for myself. "Self-care," I said, rolling my eyes for effect. He kissed me on the forehead, told me I deserved it. The irony was almost sweet. The night before his birthday, I couldn't sleep. Not because of nerves, but because of the strange calm that comes before detonation. I walked through the apartment, touching the edges of furniture, remembering the years I'd spent shrinking myself to fit inside his world. Every wall still carried his fingerprints, literal and metaphorical. Tomorrow, those prints would start fading. At 6 a.m., I woke before him. The sky was a dull silver. I brewed coffee, left his mug by the sink, kissed him goodbye as he left for work. "Don't get too emotional if I forget to call later," he joked. "I won't," I said. "I promise." At 10 a.m., the bakery texted, "Order confirmed, out for delivery." I reread the message twice, then set my phone down and smiled. To kill a lie, you don't need violence. You just need light. I imagined the scene, Sophie stepping through those glass doors, her dress too cheerful for the office, everyone turning to look. The gold-lettered cake gleaming under fluorescent light, Ethan's face freezing somewhere between charm and panic. This sudden shift in air when people realize the joke isn't funny anymore. And in that moment, not explosive, not loud, just clean and exact, his kingdom of composure would crumble. I spent the rest of the morning tidying the apartment. Calm, methodical. I lit a candle, opened the windows, let the city breathe through. There's something holy about order before chaos. When the clock hit noon, I made tea, sat by the window, and waited. By 12:37, my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. It happened. I didn't need details yet, just those 2 words. They were enough. I leaned back in my chair, the city humming below, and exhaled. Months of manipulation had led to this single, delicate correction of the narrative. He'd told me I was too emotional to be rational, too sensitive to be strategic, too dramatic to stay composed. He was about to learn what emotional intelligence really looked like. The office had that Friday energy, even though it was only Wednesday. Chatter, coffee, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. On the 14th floor of Carter and Lowe, everything gleamed. Glass walls, fresh flowers, expensive calm. Ethan thrived in places like that. He was the kind of man who made stillness look like power. His team had decorated the break room with silver balloons that spelled out "Happy Birthday, Ethan," and a banner that screamed, "You're the best," in corporate optimism. He pretended to act surprised, but everyone could tell he'd been waiting for this all week. "Don't make a big deal out of it," he said, smiling just wide enough to invite attention. "I'm not that special." Laughter, eye rolls, everyone adored him. Of course they did. At exactly 12:27 p.m., the elevator dinged. A woman stepped out, heels clicking, sunlight catching in her hair, a pristine white cake box in her hands. Sophie. She looked confident, almost glowing, her smile the kind people practice in mirrors. The box she carried gleamed with gold lettering on the lid. "Happy birthday, Ethan, from the one who really knows what you like." Quote. The room went quiet for half a second, the kind of quiet that has curiosity hiding inside it. "Oh, wow," someone said near the coffee machine. "Did your girlfriend send that?" Ethan froze. Then he laughed a little too loudly. "Oh, no, it's from a client," he said. "Inside joke." Sophie blinked. "A client?" "Yeah," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Can we talk outside for a sec?" But Sophie didn't move. She set the cake on the counter, lifted the lid, and read the inscription out loud. Her tone wasn't angry, just brittle. "From the one who really knows what you like." People started glancing at one another. Someone whispered. Another pretended to cough. Sophie turned to him, still holding the lid. "You told me your girlfriend didn't know about us." A pin could have dropped in that room, and it would have sounded like thunder. He smiled, the kind of tight, panicked smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Sophie, not now." "Oh, I think now is perfect," she said softly. "You told me you'd handle it after your birthday." His co-workers were frozen, half horrified, half fascinated. Lena from HR, my quiet little informant, crossed her arms and said, "Maybe you should take this somewhere private, Ethan." But the damage was already done. Every word, every glance, every shift of body language screamed what no one dared to say out loud. He took a step forward, whispering, "Sophie, please." She shook her head. "You're unbelievable." Then, to the room, "I'm sorry, everyone. I shouldn't have come." She left the box on the table and walked out, her heels echoing all the way down the hallway. The elevator doors slid shut behind her, like punctuation. No one spoke for a long time. Then someone muttered, "Well, that was awkward." Ethan stood there, pale, jaw clenched, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out without thinking, and on the screen a new message flashed. "Me. Still think I'm too emotional?" He stared at it, color draining from his face. The room was silent except for the hum of the lights and the soft fizz of a soda can being opened at the wrong time. Lena cleared her throat. "You okay, boss?" He didn't answer. He just picked up the cake, still half open, and walked out. That was the last time he'd ever own a room that completely. At home, I was sitting by the window, tea cooling beside me, when my phone buzzed. "Lena, it was spectacular." I smiled, slow and steady. He said emotions made me weak. Turns out they made me exact. Ethan didn't go back to his desk. He just kept walking. Past the conference rooms, past the glass doors that once reflected his favorite thing in the world, himself. Every footstep echoed like an accusation. Behind him, the office whispered in fragments. The laughter that had once followed him everywhere now sounded like static. He locked himself in his office and sat there, staring at the cake box on the floor. The words glared up at him, "From the one who really knows what you like." He could practically feel the eyes still burning holes through the walls. Somewhere out there, Sophie was probably crying, or maybe laughing. HR was already in damage control mode, and all he could do was sit in the wreckage of his own calm. For a man who prided himself on composure, panic looked strange on him. He texted me once, just once. "Ethan, did you do this?" I didn't answer. He tried again. "Ethan, we need to talk, please." Still nothing. Let him stew. Let him imagine me sitting in the dark, plotting. The truth was simpler. I was sitting in broad daylight, sipping tea, watching the city move on like it always does. By mid-afternoon, the story had spread through the building like spilled perfume. Lena sent me updates in bullet points. HR meeting at 2 o'clock. He's blaming a misunderstanding. Sophie's packing her desk. Everyone knows. It's funny how fast respect evaporates once someone stops performing control. The same coworkers who once called him the calmest man in marketing now avoided eye contact. In an office built on image, nothing is more contagious than humiliation. At 4 p.m., he finally drove home. I heard his car before I saw it. The sharp, angry screech of tires in the driveway. He slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. I didn't move. I wanted him to find me exactly as I was. Unbothered, whole, at peace. He stormed into the living room, still wearing the same wrinkled shirt from the office. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. I looked up from my laptop. "You'll have to be more specific." "Don't play stupid with me," he snapped. "You embarrassed me in front of my entire team." I tilted my head. "No, Ethan, you did that all by yourself. I just delivered the props." His face went white, then red, then something in between. "Do you have any idea what this will do to my career?" "Probably teach you the value of emotional regulation," I said softly. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. The woman who used to apologize for crying was gone. What stood in her place was calm, his old weapon now turned against him. He sank onto the couch, hands trembling. "I can fix this," he whispered, almost to himself. "I just need to talk to HR, clear the air, make them see it was..." "Manipulation?" I offered. "Lying? Gaslighting? Which word are we going with?" He looked up sharply. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut in. "You spent months calling me too emotional, too dramatic, too unstable. And now look at you, a single cake, and you're falling apart." Silence. The kind that hurts. The kind that smells like endings. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, there was no spin, no performance, just quiet defeat. He stood, walked to the door, and stopped. "Congratulations," he said bitterly. "You got your revenge." "No," I said, standing too. "I got my balance back." He left without another word. The slam of the door felt final this time. I walked to the window, watching him drive away, sunlight bouncing off the hood of his car as he disappeared down the street. The apartment was still, peaceful. I could almost hear my own heartbeat settling into rhythm again. My phone buzzed. Lena, again. "He's been sent home for the week." Everyone's talking, but no one's defending him. I typed back one line. "Good. Let him feel what it's like to be seen." When I set the phone down, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked calm, not the fragile kind he used to mock, but something deeper, grounded, certain. He'd spent years convincing me that emotion was weakness. But right then, I realized something he never would. It was the only thing that had ever made me human. By morning, the internet had done what the internet does best, turned gossip into gospel. A blurry photo of the cake had made its way to a local business forum. No names, just a caption. "Office birthdays aren't what they used to be." But everyone at Carter & Lowe knew exactly who it was about. Ethan's world didn't collapse all at once. It eroded, hour by hour. His calendar filled with urgent meetings that weren't really meetings. HR wanted clarity. Leadership wanted damage control. PR wanted distance. The man who'd once built a career on being unshakable was now shaking in conference rooms, trying to hold on to a version of himself that no longer existed. Lena texted me updates like breaking news. "He's claiming the cake was a prank." No one believes him. Sophie quit. He's off the project list. The thing about image is, it's fragile. One crack, and the whole surface stops reflecting light. Meanwhile, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Stillness. Not emptiness. Clarity. My apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic below. The air felt new. I made coffee, opened the windows, and watched sunlight pour across the floor like forgiveness that had no one left to give it to. Around noon, his name flashed on my phone. I didn't pick up. Then came the voicemail. "Linda, please, you've made your point. Everyone's turned on me. HR is talking suspension. I just need you to tell them this was a misunderstanding. You don't have to forgive me. Just help me fix it." I listened once, then deleted it. By evening, another message. "You're ruining my life over a stupid mistake." I almost laughed. He still thought this was about punishment. It never was. It was about truth. That night, I went out for dinner with Lena. First time I'd said yes to a social invitation in months. She ordered wine before the menus even hit the table. "To poetic justice," she said, raising her glass. I smiled. To being called too emotional by men who can't handle consequences. We laughed. The sound was sharp but clean, like glass breaking in reverse, shards reforming into something whole. Across the restaurant, a group of coworkers sat huddled over their phones. I caught snippets. "Did you see the email? He's officially on leave. She's the one who—" I didn't flinch when they looked over. I just kept eating. Let them talk. It's strange how humiliation looks different when you're not the one wearing it. Back at home, I checked my inbox. There it was, an email from HR, polite but pointed. "We'd appreciate your discretion regarding recent events at Carter & Lowe." Discretion. Such a beautiful word for silence. I closed the message and whispered to no one, "You've already had mine." The next morning, Ethan showed up at my building. I saw his car from the window. Same silver sedan, same arrogance clinging to it like old smoke. He didn't buzz. He just waited. 15 minutes. Then 30. Eventually, he texted, "You win." I didn't reply. Winning had nothing to do with it. A few hours later, Lena sent one last message. "He's gone. Cleared out his desk. They're saying mutual separation." Mutual. Another polite lie. The world loves sanitizing men's downfalls. It keeps the system neat. I stood by the window again, mug warm in my hands, city alive beneath me. For months, he'd controlled every version of the story, what people thought of me, what I thought of myself. Now, the silence was mine. It didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like reclamation. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just breathed, long and deep, because freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the absence of explanation. And somewhere, in some office storage room, that gold-lettered cake was probably rotting under plastic wrap, just like his lies. It didn't take long for him to try and rewrite history. Men like Ethan always believe they're the narrators, even when the book's already closed. 3 days after he resigned, a mutual friend sent me a link, his social media comeback. A long, self-pitying post, written in that corporate therapy tone people use when they want forgiveness without accountability. Sometimes people make mistakes when they're under pressure. Sometimes relationships suffer because communication breaks down. I've learned a lot this week about resilience, empathy, and the importance of privacy. Privacy. The man who turned my life into performance art was suddenly passionate about privacy. The comments were a predictable mix. "Hang in there, man. We all mess up. Proud of you for owning your truth." He hadn't owned anything. He'd just changed the lighting. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. But he wasn't done. A week later, he showed up again. Not at my door. He knew better than that. But at my favorite coffee shop. I saw him through the window first, standing by the counter, that familiar blend of entitlement and exhaustion clinging to him like cheap cologne. He spotted me before I could decide whether to leave, lifted a hand, and gave a small, uncertain smile. I didn't wave back, but he walked over anyway. Some people never learn to read silence. "Hey," he said softly, as if the word itself might reset the timeline. "You look good." I stared at him. "You don't." He winced but forced a laugh. "Yeah, I've had better weeks." He sat down uninvited. The same posture, same careful tone, but the edges were gone. His calm wasn't power anymore. It was armor full of cracks. "I just wanted to clear the air," he began. "What happened? It got out of control. I made some bad choices." "Bad choices?" I repeated. "You lied, cheated, and humiliated me publicly. That's not a choice, Ethan. That's a personality." He leaned forward. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not," I said quietly. "I'm just not emotional about it anymore." That landed. He blinked, looked down at his coffee. The silence between us was dense with everything he couldn't fix. "You've made people think I'm a monster," he said finally. I almost smiled. "You made them think that. I just stopped arguing." For a moment he looked lost, like a man who's finally realized the script doesn't respond to his cues anymore. He opened his mouth again, then shut it. Whatever argument he'd been preparing dissolved in the air. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said, standing. He reached out as if to stop me, but I was already walking away. Behind me, I heard him call my name once, soft, uncertain, human. For the first time, I didn't turn back. Outside, the air was cool, bright, alive. I walked until I couldn't see the coffee shop anymore, until the noise of traffic replaced the echo of his voice. Each step felt like unlearning something. Unlearning how to apologize for existing. Unlearning how to mistake control for love. That evening, I went home and opened my journal. Not to write about him. I'd done enough of that, but to write a line to myself. You can't be rewritten by someone who no longer holds the pen. The next day, his account disappeared. Deleted, deactivated, gone. Lena texted me. "He's vanished. No one knows where he went." Good, let him vanish. Let him try to find another audience. I was done performing. Weeks passed. Life started to fill in the empty spaces. The ordinary things that used to feel unreachable. Grocery runs, laughter with friends, mornings that didn't start with dread. I didn't need closure anymore. Closure was just a synonym for permission, and I'd already given myself that. One afternoon, as I left my office, my phone buzzed with a new notification. Memory from 1 year ago. It was a photo of him and me at his last birthday dinner. I looked at the picture for a long moment. 2 people smiling in low light, one already lying, the other already forgiving. I hit delete. For the first time, I didn't feel sadness or victory, just peace, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. Because the story he tried to tell about me, the emotional, dramatic, unstable woman, had finally died in the same place his career did, under the weight of his own silence. And I was free. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks or triumph. It felt like a slow exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. For the first few weeks, my world was unnervingly quiet. No constant tension humming under the surface. No second-guessing every text. No careful monitoring of tone. Just silence. Soft, breathable silence. I woke up to sunlight instead of anxiety. The absence of chaos was so foreign that it felt like luxury. I moved out of the apartment we'd shared, packed my life into boxes labeled mine, not mine, and never again. When the movers left, I stood in the empty space and listened to the echo of my own footsteps. It was the first sound that truly belonged to me. The new place wasn't perfect. Smaller, older, windows that stuck. But it was real. I painted the walls the color he always said made a room too loud. I hung artwork that didn't match, let plants spill over their pots, left dishes in the sink just because I could. Each small act of disobedience felt like reclamation. Some nights I'd catch myself waiting for his voice, the condescending tone, the correction hidden inside a compliment. It never came. That silence used to terrify me. Now it felt sacred. I started rebuilding my routines. Early runs, coffee at the same cafe every morning. The barista learned my name. Strangers started becoming familiar faces. I even joined a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for because he thought hobbies were a distraction from real goals. The first time I sat at the wheel, clay slipping through my fingers, I felt something strange. Presence. No past, no future, no performance. Just me, messy and alive. People from the old world occasionally reached out. Co-workers, mutual friends, curiosity disguised as concern. "How are you holding up? Have you heard from him?" I'd smile and say I'm fine, and this time it wasn't a lie. Even my emotions had changed shape. The anger was gone. The grief had burned itself clean. What remained was a kind of calm acceptance. The knowledge that closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from understanding you don't need one. One afternoon, Lena came by with coffee and a grin. "You're different," she said, lighter. "I'm not different," I told her. "I'm just not shrinking anymore." Quote, We sat on my messy little couch laughing about the absurdity of it all, how men like Ethan mistake control for confidence, how women like me are told to tone down what makes us powerful. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know, you could tell this story online. People would get it." I smiled. Maybe I already am. That night, I lit a candle, sat by the window, and wrote the words I wished someone had said to me a year earlier. You are not too emotional. You are not too much. You are simply feeling what others are too afraid to face. The words didn't feel like a manifesto. They felt like truth. When I finally went to bed, the city outside was humming. Distant traffic, laughter from a nearby bar, life carrying on. For once, I didn't feel behind it. I was part of it. The woman I used to be, the one who apologized for existing too loudly, was gone. What replaced her wasn't harder or colder, just freer. Tomorrow would be normal. Work, coffee, maybe a run by the river. But underneath it all was something new, a quiet confidence that I would never again mistake control for love or silence for peace. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was recovery. And for the first time, the calm I felt didn't belong to him. It belonged to me. People think healing is dramatic. They imagine it as a single day when you wake up, look in the mirror, and suddenly recognize yourself again. It's not like that. Healing is quieter. It's a series of small decisions, to breathe instead of react, to walk away instead of explain, to stop needing people who only understand you when you're silent. Months passed. His name stopped showing up in conversations, in notifications, in the corners of my mind where I used to store excuses for him. I didn't block him out of spite. I blocked him because peace has a dress code, and chaos was never invited back. Sometimes, on my way to work, I'd pass Carter and Lowe's building. The glass still gleamed. Same lobby, same polished floors. But I didn't feel anything anymore. No anger, no nostalgia. Just a faint gratitude for the woman who finally stopped mistaking composure for love. I started noticing things I used to ignore. The way morning light hit the river, the smell of rain before it starts, the sound of my own laughter not waiting for permission. Those details became the proof that I was alive again. People asked me if I ever regretted what I did. The cake, the spectacle, the public collapse of a man who called me too emotional, and my answer never changed. No. Because that day wasn't revenge, it was revelation. It showed everyone what I'd always known, but had been too polite to say, that control isn't strength, and calm isn't always kindness. I think about the word emotional a lot now, how he used it like an insult, when really it was the only thing about me that was real. Emotion isn't weakness, it's data. It's instinct whispering, something isn't right, and when you stop apologizing for listening to it, your entire life shifts. I kept that lesson close. It made me softer in the right ways and harder in the ones that mattered. It taught me that calm without compassion is just another form of cruelty. One evening, months later, I found myself back at that same bakery, the one where it all began. The smell of sugar and coffee filled the air. The same bell chimed above the door. The woman behind the counter smiled and asked if I wanted to place an order. "Not this time," I said. "Just here for the memories." She nodded, not knowing what that meant, and I laughed under my breath. It felt good, full, unforced. Before I left, I bought a single cupcake. Chocolate, gold sprinkles, no inscription, just sweetness, small and honest. That night, sitting by the window with city lights below, I took a bite and whispered the truth out loud, as if I were reminding the version of myself who once forgot it. You are not too emotional. You are just with someone too afraid to feel. And if you've ever been told that your heart is a problem to be managed, remember this, it's not. It's your compass. It's how you find your way back to yourself. Has something like this ever happened to you? Share your story in the comments.